Okay, thank you so much. Shalom, everybody, and I'm very excited to be here. Especially, I'm excited to talk about Israel. I think this is one of my passions. I live, breathe. It's in my neshama, my head, my heart. So when Daniela, she's over there and she's listening, but she offered me, Erez, want to talk about Israel? I said, yes. Doesn't matter where I am, school holidays, 4 kids, Michigan is at home, but I'm very happy I'm here. We don't have a lot of time. I'm just going to the deep waters, share the screen. If there's a problem, just shout and say, Erez, we cannot hear you. Beseder? It's not a chutzpah, I'm Israeli, I'm used to balagan. Welcome. Let me know if you can see the screen. Just raise your hand if your video is on. If you can see, yeah, okay. So Israel Uncovered. This is actually something I've been teaching and educating about Israel since I was here. Also, I used to do it in Israel as a tour guide. So to really understand the land of Israel, what does it mean to us as Israelis, and why should we care? Because I guess at the end, to take responsibility, you need to have 2 things. You need to care and you need to take action. And I think this is one of the biggest, I think, journeys for every Israeli, but also for every Jewish person. Why Israel? You guys decided on today, 7:30, opening Zoom instead of watching TV or doing other things, because I guess you care. And Israel is in our hearts. Or maybe you just want to know a bit more. Maybe you miss Israel. There's a lot of reasons. I'm hoping in this session today, I will give you the basic understanding how the land of Israel connects to us as Jewish people. And maybe it's going to be a platform to really understand a lot of the topics you're going to learn later on. So, a little bit about myself. I was born in Jerusalem, 8th generation, and you can see me here. I love traveling. I love just exploring the land from a very young age. And I decided one day I'm going to be a tour guide. And as a tour guide, I used to take children. This is in Judean desert, 5 a.m., and I'm making an omelet for 24 children. And you can see I'm just flipping it. And I'm very, very happy because this was my element. I just enjoyed every second to really explore the land and to show it to people. Stopping in different places, making coffee, just enjoying the moment. And I think it's really, really important, not only in Israel, but every place in our lives, we need to enjoy and appreciate the moment. And in the desert in Israel, you actually can feel it better because there's silence. You can hear the silence. You can pause everything. I always relate to how Bnei Israel walked 40 years in the desert to cleanse their soul moments before entering Israel. So this is me, as you can see, showing different aspects of the land. I also was a tour guide for tourists, children, and this was my profession. I led all the trips and excursions in a big high school in Jerusalem. If you know Ruby Rivlin or Yoni Netanyahu, they came out from this school, Hebrew Gymnasium of Jerusalem, beautiful school, very Zionistic. So this was me, and here are my students, and I loved every moment. I also got married in Israel. This is my wife, Tali. And I'm going to talk about this photo really soon. We had 2 children, Guy and Shiri. Guy and Shiri, 9th generation Yerushalmim. Guy today is, recently just had his bar mitzvah, 13, and Shiri, she's almost 12, soon to have bat mitzvah. And we also explored the land with them, and we had lots of fun. Every moment I have, and when we go to visit Israel, we go and visit. I had 2 more children, as you can see, Eden and Mati. They were born here. And finally, You can see Guy and Shiri, their color skin is a bit more darker because they're Israelis, and Eden and Mati are a bit more white because they were born in Australia. Okay, Emek HaChula. So Chula Valley, a very famous place in Israel. And what I want to show you here is sometimes we just need to look and observe what we see in our eyes. You can do it in every place in the world, but if you look over here, we actually see three elements. We see three layers. We see a biotical layer, a physical layer, biotical layer, and a human layer. And I can show you over here. So the physical layer, as you can see, this is the basic of the land. It's topography, climate, water. On top of this layer, we'll have a biotical layer. So we'll have plants and animals. And plants and animals could not survive without the physical layer. And that's the logic. And at the end, we have the human layer. So humans also could not survive without the physical, but also they will need food, and that's the biotical. We need animals and plants to survive. That's our diet. And there's actually a logic behind all of this. It comes from the creation of the world, from Sefer Bereshit. So when I want to explore, especially Israel, I go all the way back. I go to the beginning. Because Israel is complicated. What's the reason we are there? What's the reason? How do we connect to our, we can say, Jewish neshama or culture to that specific place? Do we have a connection with the land, or are we just Jewish people spiritually? So I wanted to find this answer. And in Sefer Bereshit, we find a lot of very special, meaningful things that connects to our life. We actually see the creation by this logic. We see the creation of the physical, then we see the creation of plants, and then animals. And the last day of the creation, we see man. And that's exactly what I said before. Now, one of the questions we want to ask, and we can see it over here, so I'm just going to go over here. So what do you think we can learn from the fact we are created from the dust of the earth? Adam, Adama. What do you think it means to he breathed into his nostrils the soul of life? And what does it mean that we are created in God's image? What's so special about our creation? So there's a lot of questions we can ask. And I guess if you look at the answers, and there's some possible answers: humility, sense of care of nature. The word Adam comes from the word Adama, land. So to show a connection to the earth. But I guess the most important thing we really need to understand about the creation is man is unique. We're special. Man shares the quality of freedom of choice. And I think this is the biggest thing I'm hoping you will get outside of this session and all the other sessions, because at the end, we choose. We choose to separate between good and bad, or good or evil. We're different from animals. Animals don't choose. They work by instinct. They're hungry, they're going to eat. People, if they're hungry, they open the fridge. They choose to make an omelet, or they choose to make a salad. We choose what to say. We can be kind to others, or we can be mean. We can choose how to act. In all of this, I haven't talked about Israel yet, but you can start to understand that Israel, it's actually by choosing. So let's continue. If you don't believe in the creation of the world, so you say, it's nonsense. The world, I believe in the Big Bang, and I believe in nature. Also, by evolution, it's the same logic. So we have the physical layer that was created, and then life began. We start to see plants and animals, and you can see over here as well, you can see humans. With the last part of the creation, this is like the week, and that's Friday, the last day of creation. So maybe if somebody just want to unmute themselves, What layer can we see here that's very powerful? So we talked about physical, biotical, and human. And you can just unmute yourself if you wish. Dvora?
Physical.
Yes. So we see the physical layer. And the physical layer, and I'm hoping you can also hear the music in the background. This is the desert of Israel, the Negev. Very, very spiritual place. You don't need plants or animals or humans to connect to this place. It's pure. One of my famous, one of the most amazing places for me, the desert. I recommend deeply to go and visit the Negev when the skies are open. We can also see the physical layer over here. This is the Dead Sea. So we won't see plants and animals because the physical layer, you can say, cannot grow any plants and animals. So obviously you won't see a lot of humans. We can see the biotical layer. So plants, animals, obviously because the climate is suitable. And there's a lot of songs written about places of Israel. This is a song about Israel Valley. I have a list of songs. Every place in Israel, I have a song. So I'm happy to share with you one day. Over here, we can see the biotical layer. Biotical layer doesn't need humans at all. It could survive by itself. It managed to do it for millions of years. Flowers need bees, the bees need flower, no human touch at all. And this is an example of the biotical layer. If we just look and observe, we're so busy in our lives, but just look at God's creations. You can see here a moth on a fingertip, just a fingertip. And, you know, it's a small creature. This is called, I'll show you this one, it's called the poodle moth. So amazing, amazing creatures if you just stop and observe. And over here we have the human layer. And even though we're last in creation, the humans are the most influenced. We choose, and you can see here Tel Aviv. So you won't see any part of physical or biotical because it's human decision. We can also build mountains if you want. This is a mountain built by a king called King Herod, that he ruled in Israel. He also built the second Bet HaMikdash, Caesarea, Masada. He was the builder. But it's all by choosing. We also can choose if you want to bring water to places we usually don't have water. And then we can have life. So let's focus all of this about Israel. And you can see here, this is a map of the world. The orange places is the driest place. This is the Sahara Desert. The blue areas, the more blue it is, we have more rain, and then this is less rain. And if we focus on this place over here, the Sahara Desert, you can see that Israel is actually part of the Sahara Desert. Meaning, most of Israel, you can see it over here, 62% of Israel is desert climate. It's the continued, this is Sinai Desert. And if you can imagine, this is Mount Sinai over here. We can imagine how the Israelites crossed the Red Sea and walked over here. Moshe met God over here and continued to Eretz Israel, 40 years walking. But we are actually part of the desert. And you can see here we have two types of climate. We have desert climate and we have Mediterranean climate. We actually see it visually in the satellite. This is more green. And this is another photo you can see here. And obviously, Mediterranean climate, we have rain. most of the people are going to live in these places. You can see over here, River Nile, source of water. Over here, Mediterranean climate. All the rest, you won't see a lot of people at all. And it's very logical to see all of this. This is a beautiful photo. So what does it mean when we have two types of climate? I'm going to do it quickly. Animals have been evolved differently because of the climate. So we have here a hare and a bunny, and came from the same family, but because they're in a different climate, you can see how they evolve differently. So a hare has long ears, he can hear the predators, and long, high feet, so he can jump. And the bunny here in the desert, he has short ears and short legs, he can hide inside caves. Also, we have a mountain gazelle, Yael, or a Mediterranean gazelle. And you can see as well, one of them is light, he can run, jump. The other one is heavy, and he has these big horns to protect his territory. All of this is because of the climate. Now, Israel is very unique, as you can see here. It's very small, Israel, compared to other places in the world. Even though we're really small, we have a lot of types of species of plants and animals per square meter. This makes Israel unique in the world because of these two types of climates. Now, when we talk about Israel, we separate it into three main areas. We have geographically the Rift Valley, the mountain area, and the coastal area over here. In this map, you can see it better. So the Rift Valley, including Golan Heights and Mount Hermon, the mountain region, including the Galil, Judea and Samaria, in the mountain of the Negev, and the coastal area, it's all the rest. So it has specific specification. It doesn't have limestone like we have in the mountain region, etc. You can see it over here. Because of this unique topography, we actually have the Dead Sea. So the Dead Sea, if you can see it over here maybe, was created because it's low. So it is in a Mediterranean climate, but we have clouds coming from the west. We have rain in Jerusalem and Judean mountains, but when it continues east, heat rises up, it evaporates the clouds. We won't have rain, so we have a desert. And you can see it actually over here. This part was supposed to be green, but it's also a desert because of this unique topography. And we call it a mountain in the shadow of a rain. Midbar b'tzel geshem. Sorry, a desert in the shadow of the rain. This is only half an hour drive. So imagine, I always compare, I work at Scopus, so from Caulfield to Beirut, suddenly you have rain and then you have a desert. And that's amazing to discover. So I'm in education and I teach children all about, I'm running forward, all about the topography. And you can see here, I'm teaching children actually in Bialik about the topography, and we're creating the map of Israel. And we can discover the two types of climate, we can discover the topography. And I think this is the best way to actually understand Israel in a lot of ways. When I used to work at JNF, I actually built a map, a huge map that shows the types of climate in the topography. Because when you want to talk about Israel, it makes no sense to talk about it in a two-dimensional map. Israel is very special and unique because of the topography. And you can actually understand a lot of political decisions that leaders made because of the topography. I built this map for Beit Weizmann. I know Zion is in Victoria. I think this map is somewhere in one of the storages. I don't know. I haven't been there for a while. But I always said, if you're bringing politicians, you actually need to show the map of Israel. So some people say this is the West Bank. Yes, but it's also two mountains called Judea and Samaria. Some people say the Golan Heights, it's in a mountain region, the Galil, the Rift Valley. All of this makes sense. If you have any questions, guys, until now, please, share your thoughts. If not, I will continue. You can just unmute yourself if you wish. This idea I actually took from a real map somebody built in Israel. I thought of bringing it to Australia. They said it's going to cost 300,000 shekels. So instead, I just built it in $200. Cheaper. It's not similar to this, but I think it's not a bad idea. And I really enjoyed building this. But you can see how it looks like. So the topography, the mountain, the Rift Valley, Mount Hermon, the Galil, Carmel. It makes sense to connect all of this also from the stories we learned from the Tanakh. And my job is actually bringing Israel here to the students in Mount Scopus. And I'm bringing here the Hermon. I'm bringing the desert. And you can see how I can bring the desert to the students to have a feeling about what it all means. So this is my passion. I'm trying my best to connect our community to Israel in very special ways, but actually to try and bring Israel to life. Okay, I'm going forward. And let's talk about the mountain region. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time, but I'm usually running these sessions and I'm talking about all the areas in Israel. And what I'm doing is, just to show you maybe here once again, in every session, I'm unfolding the physical layer, and then we can discuss the biotical layer, and at the end, we can talk about the human layer. And for instance, today we're going to talk a little bit about the mountain region, how it was created, and what kind of elements we have there, and why people in the past, in biblical times, but also today, want to live here by choosing. So every session, usually I have 5 sessions. So this is, we talk about the Rift Valley, mountain region, coastal area, conclusion. So hopefully one day, if you want to join to these sessions, you can contact me if you want. Hopefully, Joel could leave my email and you can contact me. So let's talk about homeland. Homeland in English. In Hebrew, it's Eretz Bait, homeland. But we actually, in Hebrew, we don't say homeland, we say moledet. And moledet in English is birth. So it's not just saying this is our homeland, it's actually where we were born. And we have a very usually sentimental to the place we were born. If somebody was born in South Africa, so it's always you remember that place. And it all began from Avraham Avinu. So you can see this map, Avraham, he was born in Ur Kasdim, over here. And God said to him, go. He said to him twice, lech lecha le'artzecha, and just go. And we know by the stories of Abraham started to walk. We're not sure exactly if he walked through which river, was it the Prat or the Chideke, very famous rivers that's flowing today, some in Iraq, some in also in Turkey, in Syria a little bit. But we know he came to Haran, and his father died in Haran. And he continued to Eretz Canaan, to Israel. And he entered this place over here, just over here. We know by fact that he entered here because it's mentioned. So we read from the Torah, and we know these places. So we actually know that Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, we know exactly where they walked in Eretz Canaan, in Israel. amazingly, most of them walked in this area. So I want to talk about this area over here. So if you can imagine, Abraham came over here to Emek Dotan, a valley of Dotan. And then, if we look at this map, he had a choice. We talked about choosing. He could have walked through this path. It's called the path of the kings. Quite easy. You don't need to climb too much, and you could walk over here. Or you could walk and enter to the coastal area. And actually, these times, people used to walk in these places as well. But he decided to climb the mountain. He took all his camels and sheep and people, and he climbed up to a place called Shechem. And then he continued to Yerushalayim, he continued to Bethlehem, he continued to Hebron. Why? What's the reason? Abraham, he was 70 years old when he started to climb the mountain. Why not choose this path or this path? So the answer is, he was sent. So it's been said, again, Abraham told him, Lech lecha. He told him, go, twice. And from this mountain, he said to Abraham, I'm giving you this land. Imagine, you can only see a land if you're up high in a mountain. And he continued, he said to him, go, lech lecha, kach et bincha yechidcha, take your only son and go sacrifice him here at Mount Moriah. And he continued to send him also over here. This means these places, as we know, became holy. And you can see maybe here, over here, this is the book of Psalms, Sefer Tehillim, by the rivers of Babylon, where we sat down, we wept. Al Na'arot Bavel, Sham Yeshavnu v'gam bachinu b'zechenu Tzion. When the Jewish people were exiled, they were sitting in Babylon, and they were dreaming of Zion, of Tzion. But what exactly the Jewish people were dreaming of? Was it Tel Aviv? Was it Elat? No. They were dreaming of the holy places. They were dreaming of the tomb of Joseph. They were dreaming of the Kotel, or where Beit HaMikdash was. They were dreaming of the places who became holy that they were familiar with. And they were dreaming of Yerushalayim. Jerusalem, Yerushalayim shel Zahav. So I wish we had time to listen to all the words of this song. But let's talk a little bit about Yerushalayim, about Jerusalem, because they were dreaming of this place. They were dreaming actually for thousands of years to go back to this place. Every Chag, major Chag, we mention Leshana Ba'a B'Yerushalayim. The three major Chagim, Pesach, Sukkot, and Shavuot. In Israel, during the time of Beit HaMikdash, people used to walk by foot, sometimes months, to go to Yerushalayim on this Chagim. And, I always try to imagine how the feeling is to walk. You meet other people 3 times a year. What kind of celebration, what kind of feeling people had spiritually to walk all the way to Yerushalayim. Every Chag, we mention Yerushalayim. You can see here in Sukkot, you can see here the 4 minim. It's everywhere in our culture, in our well-being. So Pesach in Jerusalem, 1913. I want to show you, hopefully it's going to work, because sometimes with the internet, it makes problems. So let's see over here, Pesach how they celebrate in Yerushalayim.
ליבה של ירושלים נמצא עדיין בין החומות, מעבר לשער יפו. בערב חג הפסח ממהרים החסידים לצאת במיטב מלבושיהם אל כותל הדמעות.
I'm going to stop here, and this is an amazing, amazing footage, because what we can see the Kotel, but we can actually see men and women praying together. Now, this is 1930, pre-State of Israel. When we had the State of Israel, we have laws. But beforehand, everybody could go and pray there. So it's fascinating to discover this amazing footage. Okay, let's go back to our presentation. And I promised to talk about this photo. One of the biggest simcha in our lives as Jewish people is a wedding. And in a wedding, we have a very, very, I won't say strange for us, because I think we accept this, but some people maybe will look at it and say, what's happening there? What's kind of tradition? And as you know, or if you don't know, I'll explain. We have a bracha, a prayer we say. And we say, Im tishkachech Yerushalayim, tishakach yemini, tidbak leshoni lecheki, im lo eskarechi, im lo ele et Yerushalayim al rosh simchati. If I will forget Yerushalayim, and I won't put Yerushalayim on top of my simcha, Yerushalayim is more important from my own simcha, my own wedding. My tongue will get stuck. I cannot use my right hand, meaning my strong hand, if I won't put Yerushalayim on top of my simcha. And then we break the glass. And why do we break the glass? What's the reason? If somebody could help me, or unmute if you feel like. So we remember the destruction of Bet HaMikdash, of the Holy Temple. Yerushalayim again, Jerusalem again. I want to show you an amazing footage. And I'm a very practical person. I always want to find the logic behind things. And you know what? Some people will say, well, the Tanakh was written in the 5th century. You know, I don't believe it. Some people don't believe it. And you know what? I wasn't sure myself. I need to have proof to see the real connection. Because to have it spiritually, sometimes it's really hard. I need to find sometimes material or a logic behind stuff, especially something happened thousands of years ago. So I want to show you a footage, a discovery they found in Jerusalem. And then we can discuss about what they found, because for me, it was not only surprising, but it changed my life, changed my views about Israel, about the Jewish people in Israel. So let's see the following footage.
The final part of the First Temple period was a trying time for the Kingdom of Judah. The small kingdom struggled against the great empires of Assyria and Babylon and suffered from their might. The situation within the kingdom was even worse. The kings of Judah led their people down a treacherous path of pagan worship and heathen rituals. The spiritual and moral state of the nation reached an unprecedented low. The year 639 BCE brought about a sudden change in Jerusalem's history with the crowning of a young king. King Josiah, the grandson of Manasseh, revolutionized the spiritual culture of Judah and brought new hope to the people. Through a series of determined actions, Josiah purged the country of pagan worship and restored the belief in the God of Israel. And like unto him there was no king before him who turned to the Lord. With all his heart and with all his soul and with all his might, neither after him arose there any like him. Josiah proclaimed the temple in Jerusalem as the exclusive place for worshiping God and establishing a new regime based on justice and compassion for the weak. With the weakening of the Assyrian Empire, Josiah extended his influence to the territories of the former kingdom of Israel. His kingdom grew large and strong, as in the glorious days of David and Solomon. I'm standing here at Ketef Hinnom, facing the old city of Jerusalem. An archaeological excavation conducted here in 1979 opened a window in time back to the turbulent days of King Josiah, when belief in God and in the Torah scriptures played a vital role in the nation's life. In a family burial cave from the First Temple period, archaeologist Professor Gabi Barkai made an extraordinary discovery. At that time, the people of Jerusalem laid down their dead on stone beds like this one. The custom was to leave the body in the stone surface until it decomposed, and only the bones of the deceased remained. Later, family members would return to the cave to gather the bones of their relatives. They placed the bones, together with the deceased's valuables, in a stone repository carved at the base of the grave, in which other members of the family were also buried. During the course of history, many such repositories were looted by thieves and left empty. During the excavation, this repository also appeared to be empty, but one of the young excavators insisted on digging it up anyway. As it turned out, an earthquake had apparently caused the roof of the cave to collapse, and the rubble had completely covered the contents of the repository. When it was finally revealed, the contents were fascinating. This repository contained the bones of 95 people, buried there over the course of more than 100 years. The various finds included exquisite ceramic and glass containers from the time of Josiah, as well as a wide variety of silver and gold jewelry, rings, earrings, bracelets, and precious gemstones. But the most surprising find of all was two small rolled-up sheets of silver with holes running through their centers. The silver cylinders were threaded on a chain and worn like a necklace. When researchers at the Israel Museum Laboratory opened the cylinders, they were amazed to discover that they'd been engraved with tiny letters in ancient Hebrew.
After the discoveries made in 1979, the two tiny silver scrolls discovered right behind me here were transferred to the Israel Museum, where they were opened in the lab. And they were shown to be covered densely with Hebrew, ancient Hebrew characters. The characters showed to be the priestly benediction, or the Birkat Kohanim, which appears in the Bible in the book of Numbers, Sefer Bamidbar, chapter 6, verses 24 and on. The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face shine upon thee and be gracious to thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace. Those verses are 2,600 years old. According to the shape of characters, according to the context of the archaeological finds, and they are centuries earlier than the oldest biblical verses which were known until then, being the Dead Sea Scrolls found at Qumran. This was the first time that such objects were ever discovered. It was most probably customary in First Temple period to wear upon the body, on the fingers, on the neck, on the heart, on the wrist, all kinds of written objects with religious texts, very familiar to the tefillin, or the phylacteries, which are known until this very day in Judaism. It would be, of course, interesting to know who was exactly the person who wore upon his body this written object of 2,600 years ago. This discovery of the priestly benediction discovered here closed also a personal circle for me. I was born in the terrible years of Second World War in the ghetto of Budapest, Hungary. In my early days in Hungary, we were used to go to synagogue with my father, and when we came home, my father was used to bless me with the words of the priestly benediction. The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face shine upon thee and be gracious to thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace.
Hang on, Erez. I think you're on mute. Hang on. There we go. Did that work?
Oh, yes, Joel has the power. Okay, I couldn't do it by myself. Thanks. Okay, I'm going back. So this founding, if you can imagine, for me, it's a proof that the Bible, the Tanakh, was written while things actually happen. Because if we have a pasuk, a verse that's mentioned in the Tanakh, and it's backdated to this time, you know, if for me, it's a living proof. For me, it's not just words that somebody wrote, it's alive. Let's talk about the mountain region. We have a few more minutes. I don't know if you can see, I have hundreds of slides. But as I told you, I have a lot of sessions. But let's talk a little bit about the beginning of civilization, because it will make sense to understand why people settled in these areas. And if we talk about the beginning of civilization, usually people settle where we have water, farming, you can cultivate the land, transportations. So we have four major places that civilization started. So we have the Middle East, we have the River Nile, we have India and China. So all of them, as you can see, they have main sources of water. The physical layer is very important. If you remember, no water, no plants and animals, no humans. So we can see here Mesopotamia. This is, again, if you remember, I said that Abraham was born over here in Mesopotamia. We have the River Nile, yeah, the pyramids over here. We have the Indus River, and we have the Yellow River in China. Jerusalem. Where is the river? Why Jerusalem? Now, Jerusalem, if you know, it's on a mountain. So it's not a valley. You can see here, these mountains actually, we see, this is Mount Moriah. This is the city of David, if you can imagine, if you visit there. This is Mount Zion, Mount Zion. This is Mount Olives and Mount Scopus. Mount Scopus, the school that I'm teaching, is named after this. Mount Moriah, if you know, it's in Sydney, a very famous school as well. Jerusalem is dated more than almost 4,000 years ago. And look how many empires wanted a piece of Jerusalem. The Canaanites, the Jebusites, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persians, And the list goes on and on and on and on. What's so special about Jerusalem? Over here, there's no connection to transportation. This place was empty. So it's hard to go. It's 800 meters above sea level. What's the reason? What's so special about Jerusalem? I want to show you the following video. And maybe we're going to finish with this. Just to understand how religion spread around the world. Because it's also fascinating to discover, other religions, why they wanted to go and have a peace. And let's see this. We are 3000 BC. Hinduism. Abraham was born in Ur. Canaanites, Israel, Judaism. Christianity, Islam, the Jewish people in Europe. Israel, the only Jewish state in the world. And, it's fascinating to see in this map. Some people say that we want to conquer the world. Yeah. And fascinating to see what's happening with other places. We are dropped in a sea. Not dropped in the sea. So I'm going to stop here. I wish I had more time. I want to leave some time for maybe some questions. I didn't give you the answer why Jerusalem though. So the answer is obviously because we understand it's because of the water. And King David discovered this water. We can find some phrases. Vayilkot David in Metzudat Zion, David captured the stronghold of Zion. This is the city of David. And David said that that day, whoever would strike the Jebusites, let him reach the lame and the blind, who are hated by David's soul, through the water tunnel. Water. There's another phrase here later on with a different king, King Chizkiyahu. He actually advise his people that block all the springs and the streams of the flowing through the land. There is a huge spring water flowing underneath the city of David. And this is a very famous spring water called Gihon. Gihon, the translation is to appear, because the water appears usually more in winter, and in summer it's a bit more slow stream. So this is the reason why Jerusalem is so important for a lot of nations, because it's a bridge between continents. It's a place that you have enough water to sustain all Judean mountains and all the people who live there till today. So water is the source of life. But I want to stop here. We didn't have a chance to talk about the biotical, about the 7 species, about a lot of elements that connects to our people. It's only because of the time. But I'm hoping maybe we can have a discussion. If you have any questions.
We've had a few questions sent in. So I'll just ask the first one. So obviously you were born in Israel. Why did you make the decision to leave, and how do you engage with Israel and your Zionism being outside of Israel?
Oh, a beautiful question. As I said, I'm married to an Australian. And obviously we made a decision. One of the decisions, I finished my master's. My plan was to continue studying PhD. We thought to come here for a few years. And obviously my wife wanted to be close to her parents that passed away just recently. I'm hoping to go back really soon. So my plan is to go back, and we see how it goes. It's not only one person's decision, but I'm engaging with Israel through education. I'm teaching children, I'm teaching people in the community. This is a big part of what I do. I go to Ulpan with children year 10. So every moment, every opportunity, also like this, I want to share my knowledge. I want to, talk about it as much as I can, and to show the truth and to show the beautiful sides of Israel, not only what we hear from the media.
So that might actually lead on well to the next question. So you mentioned and showed a lot of the historical evidence that exists and shows the Jewish connection to Israel. Why do you think this is so often ignored?
Well, I guess the media is controlling mostly to our kishke. Yeah, it goes to people's raw material, and it's more romantic to show, different sides of Israel, because this is what people used to. There's a lot of people that are I guess, we are a minority in the world, and to show our side is a bit, I'm not sure that the media would last and survive if only Jewish people would be engaged with that. So it's not that romantic. It's more romantic to see what's happening now. And what's happening now, in my opinion, you actually need to understand the history. Every person without understanding their past, the future is being in the shadows. So I'm not sure why it's being ignored. I'm not sure it's very romantic to a lot of people, and people want to see the raw, they want to see it quick, now, or else they're going to change the channel.
We've got one last one. So you mentioned obviously the very different geographic elements of Israel, the different climates, the different cultures, the animal life. So the question is, what's your favorite part of Israel?
I must say Jerusalem, but I always say every place in Israel I love. Every place I just feel at home. It's my home. So there's no specific, but I think Yerushalayim, I have a special place in my heart.
Beautiful. I think a really, really good place to finish. So with that, I think we'll finish up the session. I want to send a big thank you to our Zionism Victoria sponsors, without whom nothing we do would be possible. And of course, thank everyone for joining us tonight. And of course, a big thank you to Erez for delivering what was a really enlightening session and a great way to start off our Talking About Israel series. So thank you, Erez, for joining us tonight. If you or anyone else think that they might benefit from the program, especially the next 4 sessions that are going to be run, please tell them to head to our website and register. It's going to be some really, really great sessions. Next week, same time on Tuesday at 7:30. We're going to be having the narratives of Israeli nationalism session. So that's going to be really, really interesting. So yeah, make sure you register for that. And again, we'll send out all the emails you need to get onto the session. So yeah, with that, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, Erez, for delivering a great first session.
Thank you. I'm just going to leave because I saw some question. If it's okay, I'm just going to leave my email.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. If you have any questions, I'm not going to run the next session. I think it's somebody else.
Yeah.
But not me. But if you want, I'm just going to write fig.edu.au. And that's my email. If you feel any question, I'm happy to answer. Hopefully I have all the answers. I don't know, but I'm here for anything. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Beautiful. Thank you, Erez. If people don't have time to copy it, also feel free to email me and I'll send Erez's details through. So yeah, thank you everyone and good night.
Thank you. Toda rabba, Laila Tov. Thank you. Thanks guys. Thank you.